The Grand Hall of Mathematical Excellence on Centauri Prime had never seen such disorder. The pristine quantum glass walls reflected chaos as dozens of alien mathematicians argued in their native tongues, their voices creating a cacophony that echoed through the usually serene chamber. At the center of this storm stood Dr. Priya Patel, a 26-year-old mathematician from Mumbai, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic projection floating before her. The projection displayed what the Galactic Academic Council had dubbed the Eternal Question, a mathematical problem that had remained unsolved for over 3 millennia. Yet moments ago, this human had casually approached the display and, with a few elegant gestures, had begun unraveling its complexities. High theorist Zewexextal, a towering crystalline being whose faceted surface sparkled with internal calculations, raised all 4 of their appendages in protest. Impossible. The human mathematical processing capacity has been thoroughly documented. Their neural pathways are simply too primitive for this level of abstract thinking. Priya continued her work, her fingers dancing through the holographic numbers and symbols as naturally as if she were conducting an orchestra. She had spent the last 3 years working as a professor at Delhi University, publishing papers that most of her colleagues considered too revolutionary to be taken seriously. Now, standing before the greatest mathematical minds in the galaxy, she felt strangely calm. With respect, High Theorist, she said, her voice steady, I believe your fundamental assumption about human cognition is flawed. We don't think linearly, we think in patterns, in relationships, in stories. Professor NX Lara, a serpentine mathematician whose scales shifted colors with her emotional state, slithered closer to examine Priya's work. Her scales flickered between deep purple, confusion, and bright gold, excitement. But this completely restructures the Kalmarian principle of quantum mathematics. Because the Kalmarian principle itself was built on a limited understanding, Priya explained, adding another layer to her solution. Human mathematics evolved alongside our storytelling, our art, our music. We see mathematics not just as numbers, but as the poetry of the universe. The holographic display expanded, showing the intricate connections Priya had discovered. The solution wasn't just elegant, it was beautiful, incorporating elements that the alien mathematicians had always considered separate and unrelated. Dr. Vorix, the eldest member of the council and a being composed entirely of living mathematical equations, floated forward. His form rippled with agitation. This challenges 10,000 years of established mathematical doctrine. If what you propose is correct, then everything we understood about cognitive evolution needs to be reconsidered, completed Ambassador Thela, the human representative to the Galactic Council. She had been watching from the sidelines, a proud smile playing on her lips. Priya stepped back from her work, allowing the entire assembly to see the completed solution. It hung in the air like a constellation, each part connecting to others in ways that seemed obvious now but had eluded the greatest minds in the galaxy for millennia. We humans may not have your computational speed, Priya said, addressing the entire hall, or your quantum processing capabilities. But we have something else, the ability to see connections where others see only chaos, to find patterns in what appears random, to imagine possibilities that defy conventional logic. The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about solving one problem, it was about fundamentally challenging the galaxy's understanding of intelligence itself. The aliens had always classified species based on their computational abilities, their logical processing power, their mathematical advancement. But here was evidence that true intelligence might encompass something far more complex and beautiful. High Theorist Zewexextal's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought among their species. The Council will need to review this development. And perhaps. They seem to struggle with the words, perhaps review our previous assessments of human cognitive capabilities. Ambassador Thela stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Priya's shoulder. I believe this is just the beginning. Dr. Patel's work opens up entirely new avenues of mathematical exploration. The question is Is the Galactic Academic Council prepared to consider perspectives that challenge their fundamental assumptions? The challenge hung in the air as clearly as the holographic solution. Priya knew that this was more than just about mathematics, it was about breaking down the barriers of prejudice and preconception that had limited collaboration between species for centuries. As the council members began to discuss among themselves in hushed tones, Priya caught sight of her reflection in the quantum glass walls. She saw not just herself, but the hopes and potential of all humanity standing with her. Whatever came next would change not just her life, but the future of human-alien relations forever. The journey that had brought her here, from the bustling streets of Mumbai to the grand halls of Centauri Prime, suddenly felt like mere preparation for what was to come. The real challenge was just beginning. The news of Dr. Priya Patel's mathematical breakthrough spread through the galaxy like a quantum wave, creating ripples of controversy and fascination. Within days, the Galactic Academic Council had convened an emergency session, and Priya found herself facing what could only be described as an academic inquisition. The testing chamber was a marvel of alien architecture, its walls lined with neuro-responsive crystals that could manifest complex mathematical problems in real time. Priya stood at its center, surrounded by a panel of the most skeptical minds in the galaxy. Among them was Professor Quillian, an energy being whose form sparkled with mathematical equations, known for being particularly dismissive of primitive species. "We have prepared a series of challenges," Quillian announced, their voice resonating with barely concealed disdain. "If your previous solution wasn't merely a fortunate accident." Priya straightened her shoulders, meeting the challenge head-on. "I welcome the opportunity to demonstrate human mathematical capabilities." The first problem materialized around her, a complex topological puzzle that twisted through 11 dimensions. As she began to work, she noticed something unexpected. In the corner of the chamber stood Dr. Nexus, a quantum mechanical entity whose species was renowned for their theoretical work. Unlike the others, they watched with genuine curiosity rather than skepticism. Hours passed as Priya tackled increasingly difficult problems. She solved equations that dealt with the very fabric of spacetime, unraveled paradoxes that had stumped alien mathematicians for generations, and proposed solutions that approached problems from entirely new angles. "Fascinating," Dr. Nexus commented during a brief recess, their quantum form pulsing with interest. "You don't just solve the problems, you reframe them entirely." Priya sipped water from a specially designed container, grateful for the brief respite. Humans have always been good at looking at things differently. When you're a species that started by drawing pictures on cave walls and ended up reaching for the stars, you learn to think creatively. Perhaps, Dr. Nexus ventured, that is precisely what makes humans dangerous to the established order. You don't just solve problems, you change how we see them. Before Priya could respond, Professor Quillian interrupted. "The final challenge awaits. Something no organic mind has ever solved." The chamber darkened, and a new problem materialized. It was beautiful in its complexity, a mathematical representation of chaos theory applied to the very structure of the universe. As Priya studied it, she felt a familiar excitement building. She could see patterns emerging, connections that others might miss. "This isn't just about mathematics, is it?" she asked, looking directly at Quillian. "This is about fear. Fear that humans might not fit into the neat categories you've created for intelligence in the galaxy." A murmur ran through the assembled academics. Quillian's energy form flickered with indignation. "You dare to suggest dash?" "I suggest," Priya interrupted firmly, "that we look at this problem together. Not as different species, not as judge and subject, but as colleagues seeking understanding." To everyone's surprise, Dr. Nexus moved to stand beside her. "I agree. Perhaps it is time we learned from each other, rather than merely testing and judging." The problem hung between them, its complexity a challenge and an opportunity. Priya began to work, but this time she explained her thinking as she went, showing how human intuition and creativity could complement alien logical precision. You see, she explained, her hands moving through the holographic equations, humans have always understood that mathematics isn't just about finding the right answer, it's about understanding the story the numbers are telling us. Here, in this equation, I see not just variables and constants, but a narrative about how the universe maintains balance in chaos. As she worked, something remarkable happened. Other academics began to contribute, adding their perspectives to her solution. Dr. Nexus's quantum insights complemented her intuitive leaps, while even the skeptical Quillian found themselves drawn into the collaborative effort. The solution that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, a beautiful synthesis of multiple approaches to understanding the universe. When they finished, even Quillian's energy form pulsed with reluctant admiration. Perhaps, they admitted, we have been too quick to dismiss different forms of mathematical thinking. Dr. Nexus's form brightened. This could be the beginning of a new era in galactic mathematics. One where we learn from each other's strengths rather than focusing on perceived weaknesses. As the academics filed out of the chamber, discussing the implications of what they had witnessed, Priya felt a quiet sense of triumph. She had done more than just prove human mathematical ability, she had shown that true progress comes from collaboration and mutual respect. Ambassador Thela, who had been observing the entire session, approached with a smile. You've done more than solve their problems, Dr. Patel. You've shown them a new way of thinking about intelligence itself. Priya nodded, watching as Dr. Nexus engaged in animated discussion with other academics. This is just the beginning, she said. There's so much we can learn from each other if we're willing to keep our minds open. But as she gathered her materials to leave the chamber, she couldn't help but notice some of the older academics whispering among themselves, their forms showing signs of agitation. She had won this battle, but the war for acceptance was far from over. The next challenge would be even greater, helping the galaxy understand that human potential was far more vast and varied than they had ever imagined. In the depths of the Centauri Prime's mathematical archives, Dr. Priya Patel made a discovery that would shake the foundations of galactic mathematics. She had been granted limited access to study ancient mathematical texts, but what she found hidden within millennia-old equations was far more significant than anyone could have anticipated. The archive chamber hummed with the soft glow of preservation fields, its crystalline shelves stretching seemingly endlessly into the darkness above. Dr. Nexus floated nearby, their quantum form shifting with curiosity as Priya excitedly explained her finding. Look at these equations, she said, her fingers tracing patterns in the holographic display. They're not just describing universal constants, they're showing us that the very mathematics we use is incomplete. Dr. Nexus's form pulsed with concern. That's a dangerous conclusion, Dr. Patel. The unified mathematical framework has been the backbone of galactic science for 50,000 years. Exactly, Priya replied, pulling up more ancient texts. But what if it's only one way of seeing the universe? These ancient mathematicians, they were reaching for something more, something we've all forgotten in our rush to standardize everything. Before Dr. Nexus could respond, the archive's entrance dissolved, revealing Professor Quillian and a group of senior council members. Their collective energy signatures radiated disapproval. This area is restricted, Quillian announced, their form crackling with barely contained anger. Your access was limited to basic historical texts, not the ancient principles. Priya stood her ground. The ancient principles prove what I've been trying to tell you. The universe isn't just binary or quantum, it's both, and neither, and something more. Human mathematics has always hinted at this, but we never had the framework to fully express it. Until now. She activated her holographic display, and the chamber filled with equations that seemed to dance and flow like water. It was mathematics unlike anything the Council had seen before, a fusion of human intuition and alien precision that suggested entirely new ways of understanding reality. Impossible, one of the Council members whispered, but their tone held more awe than dismissal. Dr. Nexus moved closer to the display, their quantum form resonating with the equations. She's right. Look at how it bridges the gaps in the unified framework. This could revolutionize everything from space travel to energy production. It could also destabilize millennia of scientific progress, Quillian countered. Think of the chaos if every species started developing their own mathematical frameworks. Or think of the progress, Priya challenged. You've spent so long believing that there's only one right way to understand the universe that you've forgotten why mathematics evolved in the first place, to help us make sense of the infinite. The chamber fell silent as her words echoed off the ancient walls. Even the preservation fields seemed to hum in response to the tension. "Show us," said a new voice. From the shadows emerged Grand Theorist Vexthor, the oldest member of the council. Their crystalline form held the accumulated knowledge of centuries. "Show us what you've found, child of Earth." For the next several hours, Priya laid out her discovery. She showed how human mathematical concepts, when combined with alien understanding, revealed patterns that had always been present but never recognized. The ancient principles hadn't been just another way of doing mathematics, they had been pointing toward a greater truth about the nature of reality itself. "You see," she explained, as equations swirled around them like cosmic dancers, every species in the galaxy has developed mathematics to explain their experience of reality. Humans created geometry by looking at the world around us. Your species, she nodded to Quillian, developed quantum mathematics by observing the very small. But what if every approach is just a different window looking out at the same universe? Dr. Nexus's form brightened with understanding. A metamathematics. Not just a unified theory, but a framework that allows for multiple valid interpretations of universal constants. Precisely, Priya said. And the ancient principles prove that we're not the first to realize this. Someone, long ago, understood that the true power of mathematics lies not in forcing everyone to see things the same way, but in building bridges between different ways of seeing. Grand Theorist Vexthor raised a crystalline appendage, and the chamber's lighting shifted, casting the equations in new relief. What you propose would change everything. The academic structure of the galaxy, the way we classify species, how we understand intelligence itself. Yes, Priya agreed simply. But isn't that exactly what mathematics is supposed to do? Help us understand more, see more, be more. The council members exchanged looks, their various forms betraying a mix of emotions, fear, excitement, resistance, hope. Finally, Vexthor spoke again. The council will need time to verify your findings. And if they prove correct. They paused, their crystal form refracting light in complex patterns, we may need to reconsider many things. As the council members filed out, Dr. Nexus remained behind with Priya. You understand what you've done, they asked quietly. This won't just change mathematics. It will change the galaxy itself. Priya looked up at the towering shelves of mathematical knowledge surrounding them. Maybe it's time for change. Maybe we've all been looking at the stars through too narrow a lens. But as she began gathering her research materials, a subtle vibration ran through the archive's crystalline walls, a warning that the biggest challenges still lay ahead. The galaxy wasn't ready for change, and those who had built their power on the old system wouldn't give it up without a fight. The Great Assembly Hall of Centauri Prime had never hosted such a diverse gathering. Representatives from over 1,000 species crowded the quantum crystalline chamber, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. At the center of it all stood Dr. Priya Patel, about to present her revolutionary mathematical framework to the assembled delegates of the Galactic Scientific Congress. The stakes couldn't have been higher. In the 3 weeks since her discovery in the archives, the galaxy's academic community had split into factions. Some embraced the possibility of a new mathematical understanding, while others fought desperately to maintain the old order. High above the assembly floor, Professor Quillian conferred with a group of traditionalists, their energy forms crackling with agitation. Below them, Dr. Nexus had gathered a coalition of younger academics who saw the potential in Priya's discoveries. Distinguished delegates, Priya began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Today, I'm not here to destroy what we know about mathematics. I'm here to expand it. The holographic display activated, filling the chamber with a three-dimensional representation of her mathematical framework. It was beautiful in its complexity, yet somehow intuitive in its organization. For millennia, we've treated mathematics as a rigid hierarchy, with some approaches considered superior to others. But what if mathematics is more like an ecosystem, where different perspectives don't compete, they complement? She gestured, and the display shifted, showing how different mathematical systems, human, crystalline, quantum, and others, all fitted together like pieces of an infinite puzzle. The ancient principles didn't fail, she continued. They were simply waiting for us to evolve enough to understand them. Every species in this room has contributed something unique to our understanding of the universe. Now it's time to bring those understandings together. A deep rumbling voice interrupted from the upper tiers. It belonged to master theorist Kronax, a silicon-based entity whose mathematical work was considered sacred text in some parts of the galaxy. You speak of harmony, Dr. Patel, but your ideas threaten to unleash chaos. How many civilizations based their entire technological infrastructure on the current mathematical framework? With respect, master theorist, Dr. Nexus interjected, floating forward, we're not talking about invalidating existing mathematics. We're talking about expanding our understanding. Priya nodded gratefully to her ally. Exactly. Think of it this way, when your species discovered quantum mathematics, did it invalidate classical physics? No. It simply showed us that reality was bigger than we had imagined. She brought up a new display, this one showing practical applications. Look at what happens when we apply this expanded framework to real problems. Faster-than-light travel calculations become more efficient. Energy conversion rates improve by orders of magnitude. Even communication between different species computers becomes more streamlined. The chamber erupted in excited discussion as delegates recognized the implications. A representative from the Helix cluster, a species that experienced time non-linearly, raised all 7 appendages in excitement. This could revolutionize our temporal navigation systems, they exclaimed. We've always struggled to translate our mathematical models for other species, but this framework bridges the gap. Professor Quillian's energy form pulsed with increasing agitation. And what of the academic hierarchy? The established order? Are we to throw away millennia of tradition because one human had an interesting idea? No, Priya replied calmly. We're not throwing away anything. We're growing. Evolving. Isn't that what science is supposed to be about? Grand Theorist Vexthor, who had been silently observing until now, moved to the center of the chamber. Their crystalline form reflected the holographic equations in mesmerizing patterns. I have spent 3 centuries studying mathematics, they announced, their voice resonating with authority. In all that time, I have never seen a framework that so elegantly unifies different mathematical perspectives while preserving their unique characteristics. This is not destruction of tradition, it is the fulfillment of what the ancient principles promised. The endorsement from such a respected figure sent shockwaves through the assembly. Even some of the traditionalists began to show signs of wavering. Ambassador Thela stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone. The human species has always believed that our greatest strength lies not in knowing everything, but in being willing to learn from everyone. Dr. Patel's framework embodies this principle on a mathematical level. Priya took a deep breath, preparing for her final argument. Look around this chamber. Every species here developed mathematics to understand their experience of reality. Some of you think in quantum states, others in crystal lattices, others in temporal loops. We humans think in stories and patterns. None of these approaches is wrong, they're all part of a greater truth. She expanded the holographic display one final time, showing how her framework could adapt to incorporate new mathematical systems as they were discovered. This isn't just about mathematics. It's about how we move forward as a galactic community. Do we cling to artificial hierarchies, or do we embrace the incredible diversity of thought that makes our galaxy truly extraordinary? The chamber fell silent as her words sank in. Then, gradually, delegates began to stand, or float, or shimmer, or whatever action denoted respect in their species. Even some of the traditionalists found themselves moved by the vision of unity she presented. But in the shadows of the upper tiers, Professor Quillian and a small group of hardliners remained unmoved. Their forms crackled with barely contained energy, suggesting that while this battle might be won, the war for the future of galactic mathematics was far from over. The Quantum Computation Center of Centauri Prime blazed with energy as calculations of unprecedented complexity raced through its crystalline circuits. Dr. Priya Patel stood at the master control interface, surrounded by a team of the galaxy's most brilliant minds from dozens of species. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before, using the new unified mathematical framework to solve the greatest challenge facing the galaxy. The Omega anomaly, a massive distortion in spacetime, had been growing at the edge of inhabited space for the past decade. Traditional mathematics had failed to predict its behavior, leading to devastating consequences for nearby systems. Final systems check, Dr. Nexus announced, their quantum form pulsing with anticipation. All computational arrays are aligned. Professor Quillian, who had finally joined their effort after witnessing the framework's potential, monitored the energy flows. Their earlier hostility had transformed into grudging respect, though they still watched Priya's every move with intense scrutiny. What we're attempting, Priya addressed the assembled team, isn't just about saving worlds. It's about proving that different ways of thinking, when brought together, can solve problems that none of us could solve alone. The massive holographic display showed the Omega anomaly in real time, its swirling chaos threatening to engulf another star system. They had less than 6 hours before catastrophic expansion would begin. Grand Theorist Vexthor's crystalline form sparkled as they initiated the primary sequence. Beginning integration of multi-species mathematical protocols. The center's quantum processors hummed as they began processing calculations using Priya's framework. Human intuitive mathematics merged with quantum probability calculations, crystalline logic matrices, and temporal perception algorithms from a dozen different species. Energy spike in Sector 7. Professor Quillian warned, their form flickering with concern. That's expected, Priya responded calmly. The framework allows for quantum uncertainty in traditional calculations. Watch. The display shifted, showing how the different mathematical approaches were working in harmony. Where traditional computing would have tried to force all calculations into a single format, Priya's framework allowed each species' mathematical approach to contribute in its unique way. Remarkable, whispered Dr. Nexus. The quantum calculations are actually becoming more stable by incorporating human pattern recognition. The chamber erupted in activity as the first results began coming in. The Omega anomaly's behavior patterns, chaos that had defied understanding for years, suddenly began revealing their underlying structure. It's not random, Priya explained, her hands dancing across the control interface. Look at how each mathematical system sees a different aspect of the pattern. Quantum mathematics sees the probability waves, crystalline logic sees the structural framework, human mathematics sees the recurring patterns. Ambassador Thela, watching from the observation deck with other diplomatic representatives, leaned forward in amazement. It's like each species is contributing a different piece to the same puzzle. Hours passed as they refined their calculations. The combined mathematical insights of a dozen species, working in harmony through Priya's framework, began to unravel the anomaly's secrets. We're ready, Priya announced finally. The framework has given us a complete understanding of the anomaly structure. Now comes the real test. They had developed a solution, a precisely calculated series of quantum pulses that would stabilize the anomaly. But it would only work if their unified mathematics was truly accurate. Professor Quillian moved to stand beside Priya. I once thought human mathematics was primitive, they admitted. I never understood that seeing patterns in chaos could be just as valuable as pure logical precision. Different tools for different purposes, Priya replied with a small smile. Now, let's save some worlds. The implementation was beautiful in its complexity. Quantum beams, guided by crystalline logic and human-identified patterns, pierced the heart of the anomaly. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, the swirling chaos began to stabilize. It's working, Dr. Nexus announced, their form bright with excitement. The anomaly is responding exactly as the framework predicted. The observation deck erupted in cheers as the displays confirmed their success. The Omega anomaly, terror of the galaxy's outer rim, was transforming into a stable phenomenon that could actually benefit nearby systems. Grand Theorist Vexthor approached Priya as the celebration continued around them. You've done more than save lives today, Dr. Patel. You've shown us a new way forward. The galaxy will never be the same. Priya looked around the chamber at the assembled beings, creatures of energy, crystal, quantum probability, and organic matter, all working together in harmony. That's what humans do best, she said. We don't just solve problems. We imagine new possibilities. Ambassador Thela joined them, her eyes bright with pride. The Galactic Council has already received requests from hundreds of worlds wanting to implement your framework. They're calling it the Patel paradigm. The end.